Well, the fallout from these Democrats is getting worse and worse and worse. And I've been telling you guys for years about these federal laws that's on the books that's supposed to protect Black Americans. There's nothing really on the books that's there specifically for foundational Black Americans. It always been for people of color and jurisdiction thereof, or all race, creed, even though we were going through what we were going through. So when Donald Trump got up there and he said, well, we know what the 14th Amendment was, when they wrote it down in writing, we know what they wrote. And this is the problem. So now when you see these Democrats, it's on multiple levels, always going hard for immigrants and everybody else, and they holding them and hire president over us, right? We're upset, but you got to go back to the early writings. And even with the 19 Civil Rights Act of 64, it says based off race, color, religion, sex, all these different things. Well, no, we was the ones getting our heads kicked in, right? So when you see some of the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act being repealed or pushed back, people were upset. They're saying, well, you're losing your democracy and they want to put us back in chains and they want to do this. Well, most of this is the Democrats' fault. Because when Black Americans started to push back on them, the way that they move in their policies and everything else, you guys told us to shut up and told us to be quiet. Now, when you look at a lot of these districts, when they was redistricting, a lot of these Democrats that was coming out of those districts wasn't for the grassroots Black people. They was fighting for immigrants. They were fighting for a whole bunch of different things. Now, remember, we're going into the 2030 agenda, and everybody wants a piece of the pie. Everybody wants to be out in the open and be able to live in society without judgment, right? And so whites are saying now, hey, we can't do things based off of race. That's discrimination, right? That's discrimination, knowing that there's never been recompense for what happened to Black people. But how can you have recompense for what happened to Black people when you got Democrats fighting for everybody else? So there's a confusion going on. You got them fighting for the Skittles crew. You got them fighting for immigrants. You got money being pushed for all these other different groups, while the Black community is being gentrified out of communities that they live in. They're being priced out, right? Those democratic programs didn't work, right? So now there's a reset to start all over. And the Confederates, they want the South back. Right, they were saying that there was unfair gerrymandering going on amongst Democrats in order for them to win. So now they're saying that they want Alabama back, Mississippi. They want all these states back because in California, Illinois, New York, the Democrats is running wild. That's what they're allegedly saying. But in the middle of all of this is us saying that we want our reparations. But how can we get our reparations when one side don't even think you should be alive? The other side ain't fighting on behalf of you at all. They failed to get legislation passed in the House and in the Senate, right? And even when they had the House floor and Senate floor, they still didn't press no executive orders, right? They put the immigrants and everything over you. But let's look at Roland Martin and his crew. You know, they're going crazy. They're going off. Let's get off into some of the stuff that this.
Same Supreme Court is going to have a major impact on congressional seats, state rep seats, state senate seats, county commissioner seats, city council seats, where race was used in the creation. Now, this is a extremely strange ruling by this majority. They held that Section 2 of the Act, which prohibits states from using maps that dilute minority groups' voting power, requires plaintiffs to be able to, quote, disentangle race from lawmakers' race-neutral considerations so that a strong inference may be drawn that race was a factor. What the hell are they talking about? The 6-2 decision will make it far harder for plaintiffs to challenge future maps for racial discrimination, undermining a key understanding of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Now, folks, to further break all of this down, and again, trying to get people to understand what we're dealing with, they were deciding a case regarding the second Black district in Louisiana. Here's the problem. The same Supreme Court allowed the creation of that very district. So the Republicans in Louisiana then tried to sue by saying, oh, race should not be used as a factor in that. Mm-hmm. All right, let's figure out what the hell they were talking about because they is frankly being quite clueless. Damon Hewitt is the president and executive director of the Laws Committee for Civil Rights under Law. He joins me right now. So, Frat, let's what it this ruling written by Samuel E. Lee.
So you hear him when he first started off, he says, so Frat, right? So let's just pay attention. Let's just listen, no emotion. Let's just listen and break this down piece by piece.
You know, it's all over the place. Elena Kagan, who was one of the three, she says that for all intent and purposes, what they've done is turn the Voting Rights Act into a name-only law.
Well, exactly. It's like you have rights on paper, but no remedy in fact. The court has made it incredibly difficult. It's actually usurped Congress's authority. You know, back in 1982, Lionel Gwynne and others helped to get the amendments in 1982 to make clear that there was an effect standard, that it wasn't just intentional discrimination based on the Bass Supreme Court decision out of Mobile, Alabama. Now, Justice Alito and the majority of the court has essentially overwritten that by basically changing Section 2, saying, we don't like that. We're going back to the glory days of the way it was. And that means that we have to prove intentional racial discrimination to get any kind of remedy.
Well, part of this, what happens is when you're creating this all-inclusive society and you're allowing the Skittles crew into kids' schools, you're forcing people to call men, women, women, men, allowing them to go into women's bathrooms. You're pushing for all of this within the society, right? And you're saying that you're telling illegals that they can come in and allow them to come in. They can break the law and come in, right? But everybody else in America is subjected to follow the law, right? So you have all these systems in place that the Democrats is fighting for, right? You open up the door for this. So now you open up the door for W's to go and say, hey, you can't discriminate based off of color anymore. Those are the old days. Those days are over. So those bills that were set in place that was to protect, because it wasn't, I can't say black people, it was for all minority groups, because that's what's on paper. They're rolling that back because they're saying that this is unfair. We wasn't a part of that. Why do I got to pay for what my grandparents did? That's what's happening, right? But you guys open up the door for this. Let's proceed.
So this thing is bad all the way around. But look, let's just be clear for broader context, Roland. Black people we've never had fair representation in this country. As long as there have been elections in this country, there's been racial discrimination in voting. That's why we needed a Voting Rights Act. That's why we needed a 15th Amendment to ensure that our rights to vote weren't abridged based on race, color, prior condition of servitude, as in slavery. And so what this makes it much less likely that we ever get fair representation. Now, we're not giving up, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, later. We're not giving up, but this is a tough one. This is a bitter pill to swallow, and it is devilishly ingenious in its scope because it touches Section 2 and also touches racial gerrymandering. One last point, Roland. Juxtaposed against today's decision is yesterday's summary order that most people missed because it wasn't a full written opinion. You know about the Texas mid-decade redistricting. We and others litigated that at the Lawyers Committee and other organizations as well. We won the trial before a 3-judge panel. A Trump-appointed judge wrote the majority opinion. He said, this may look like political gerrymandering only, but this is racial gerrymandering. Here's why. He goes on for 60 some odd pages explaining why. Several weeks ago, this Supreme Court issued a stay, meaning it paused that preliminary injunction. Yesterday, in a very short summary order, the court said, for the reasons we said before, y'all lose. So here's the juxtaposition.
Like that what he wrote.
Exactly. Here's the juxtaposition. Intentionally targeting Black and Latino districts in Texas and Black and Latino voters for elimination is not racial gerrymandering to this court. Yet, as you said a few minutes ago, having a remedy to a violation of Black people's rights under Section 2 is racial discrimination, is racial gerrymandering. That is intellectually dishonest.
See, and the problem is, this is Black people's fault. For many years, you've had the Black clergy, you had all these things in place. When you read the 14th, 15th Amendment, it specifically talks about all groups, not specifically Black people. So even when Trump got up there and said what he said, the Democrats in the last 40, 50 years their main focus have been on, well, let me rephrase that, because we got videos where it sways back and forth depending on how they operating. But everybody's been well intent on keeping Black Americans in the background, right? In the background. Dr. Claude Anderson warned us about this, that this day will come and that we will be fourth-class citizens under Latinos, Hispanics, and under Asians, right? So now we've given our vote to Democratic, these Democratic policies for the last 60 years. But in fourth grade in America, based off the data from 4th to 8th grade, we're reading like we're reading at a below reading average. Like these kids can't even read anymore. Like, it's ridiculous. These programs, these welfare reform programs, they've destroyed our communities, man. We haven't, when you go through black Democratic run communities, there's no businesses up and running. There's no money circulating around the communities. They help, their main priorities is the LGBTQ community and immigrants. That's it. So how do we lose in this? They lose in this because they losing that NGO money, right? Those elite Blacks whose job was to be gatekeepers, they're the ones losing it. They're the ones that's really upset, because in the Black communities, we haven't really got anything from what these Democrats have done, separate from what our grandparents did in the 60s after the death of Dr. King. It's been a colossal failure. It's been nothing but failure. Well, let's listen to some more.
That is hypocritical at best. That's what we are.
Well, and also what it essentially allows for them to do is to say, oh, we could just disperse Black and Latino voters all over the place. And so even though they make up almost 40% of Mississippi, Mississippi has the likelihood of them creating a 4-0 all-Republican district and say, well, we don't care how y'all may vote. And the crazy thing is, which we all know, that partisan gerrymandering in the South has been racial.
Yes.
This idea that, oh no, these white conservative lawmakers, they're not drawing lines and factoring in race. They are. That was the Hart, Louisiana case.
Exactly.
They literally showed that even when Democrats are drawing it, it's about race.
It always is. It's like racial gerrymandering is the evil twin of partisan gerrymandering, or vice versa.
But see, we already know that the racial gerrymandering, we know what they were doing and why these bills were set in place. But when we got in those positions to do things, we didn't do the right things, man. Like, you got gentrification so bad right now in certain Black cities where we're losing population between 80 to 90%. Over 8, man. Listen, it's bad. I can show you some stuff, man. 80 to 85% of Black students from 4th to 8th grade are below the reading average, right? In our communities, right? Since we've had control. You have home ownership. It's under 42% in Black Democratic ran cities, man. These are things that they're not going to talk about. So when we talk about reparations or having to redevelop our people, no, they got billions of dollars allocated to immigrants. That's what they have, right? So let's share the screen. Let's move over here, right? Let's move over here real quick. Wait, let's go over here real fast. So in Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is a federal law prohibiting voting practices or procedures that discriminate on the basis of race, color, or membership in the language minority group. It bans election laws that result in unequal opportunities for citizens to register to vote, including prohibiting practice that dilute minority strength, right? Unlike other sections, Section 2 is active nationwide, right? So it prohibits discrimination. It bans a standard practice or procedures that result in a denial of abridgment of the right of any citizen to vote based off of race or color or language and minority status, right? So that's important, because when you look at that, right, it's not things set in place just for Black people. They're upset because the Democratic strategy was to bring in all these immigrants and create a voting bloc with them to get them on their side. The other side is to say, man, listen, get these immigrants out of here and take them and totally wipe out these districts where they don't have the power to use that to gerrymander us out. So the Confederates is taking back over. That's all it is, man. Legal standards. A violation is established if based on the totality of circumstances, the political processes are not equally open to participation by members of a protected class. So it's basically going down to whites against other groups, right? And the whites are boasting their numbers up again, right? So then it says, as of May 2026, the political landscape is characterized by intense mutual accusations of gerrymandering between Republicans and Democrats, often described as an arms race to secure control of the U.S. House of Representatives, while Republicans have accused Democrats of conducting partisan map redrawing in states like Virginia and New York. Democrats have countered that they are responding to aggressive mid-decade redistricting by Republicans in states such as Texas, North Carolina, and Missouri. Virginia, key accusations. Virginia Republicans have accused Democrats of a power grab and creating the most gerrymandered map in America. Former VA Governor George Youngkin and other Republicans labeled a 2026 referendum to back map as an unfair attempt to flip a 6-5 Republican-leaning map to a 10-1 Democratic advantage, right? So what they're doing, so they're accusing them of is to flip these houses in these states where they can take control, where they can have full control of the Congress floor to get things passed, right? But what happens is the Republicans have now countered that, and they just wiping out the whole process, and Democrats are mad, right? Republicans accuse Democrats of attempting to manipulate. Wait a minute. Attempting to manipulate district lines to gain a 4 or 5 additional seats after a court-ordered more balanced map was used in 2024. California Republicans sued following a move supported by Governor Gavin Newsom to remap in response to Texas actions, which could net Democrats 5 additional seats. So what you have is, like they said, an arms race and a war going on where they're fighting to control seats to get laws passed, to get things passed. So this is why when Trump came in, he put in those federal judges in the Supreme Court. He put in those judges, conservative judges in the Supreme Court. He put in all these federal conservative judges, and they have things set in place because they felt like, hold on, let me show my face when I say this. They felt like when the Democrats was in, they start pushing all these laws telling us that a man was a woman and a woman was a man. And these things are going into law. They was putting in, even questioning what is a woman, right? So a lot of people were upset about that. And they was pushing all these trans rights and Skittles rights and putting them in bathrooms and having them compete in the Olympics. They was doing all these things in an all-inclusive society. And that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So now a lot of people are in support of this, right? We watched Joe Biden and his policies bring in a lot of these immigrants, right? And they put these immigrants in positions of power over the black people that was already here. A lot of black people were upset about that. So let's go back. Texas Republicans encouraged by President Trump have been accused by Democrats of legal advocacy groups of attempting to rig the 2026 election by drawing maps that disproportionately disadvantage minority voters and squeeze out 5 additional seats. Well, this is the same thing that they accused. Hold on for a second, my bad, y'all. This is the same thing that the Republicans was accusing the Democrats of doing, of stealing the elections. These are the same things that they was accusing them of doing, right? Tit for tat. Many Democratic lawmakers argued that their actions are a necessary response to level the playing field at the Republicans-led redistricting initiatives, which they say began with the remap plan in 2010, right? So then you have the Save America Act, right, and which was struck down, wanting illegals to vote in American. They wanted illegals to vote in American elections. Our Democrat colleagues are, of course, doing what they usually do under these circumstances and saying this legislation will disenfranchise voters. It will disenfranchise non-citizens. That's the point, right? So with there today on the U.S. Floor, U.S. Senator John Cornyn calls out Democrats for opposing the Save America Act, landmark legislation currently on the Senate floor that will secure America's elections by requiring individuals to present proof of citizenship when registering to vote as a photo identification before the federal elections, right? So they want them to have to be able to show that they're citizens before they can come on here and vote, right? So you have all this stuff going on, man. But I keep telling y'all, what I keep telling y'all is we don't, when you look at the stuff that's on paper, right? Let's look at this, right? Black Americans are included under the legal definition of a protected class in the United States, specifically under federal laws that prohibit discrimination based on race and color. While Black Americans are legally protected, the effectiveness of these protections is a subject of ongoing legal and political debate, with recent Supreme Court rulings of state-level policies limiting the reach of civil rights legislation, right? So here we go. Title 7 of the Civil Rights Act of 64, the landmark law prohibits employment discrimination based off of race, color, sex, and national origin. The Equal Employment Commission's EEOC explicitly states that this protects individuals against discrimination based on cultural characteristics, often like race, such as hair texture and speech. But this is the thing. There's nothing on these books that specifically say us. It's based off of all groups, and because it's based off of all groups, this is why these Democrats go so hard for immigrants and everybody else, and not you. You get pushed to the back of the line. You on the back burner all the time, and this is why they come on here to tell you to shut up and vote, because they don't have things on here specifically for you, and they can't do things specifically for you because they allow this stuff to happen. Right. So again, even when we come here, right, before we get back, even when we come here, we got 80 to 81 to 85% of fourth grade of Black 4th to 8th grade students lack proficiency in reading, with proficiency rates of Black students specifically dropping to 17% in the 4th grade and 14% by the 8th grade in 2024. Right. These are all since we've been following these a lot of these Democrats that come out of these districts, right? Our home ownership is at a historic low, right? When you go over here, right? Gentrification has led to displacement of long-term residents and the erosion of cultural identity in many historically Black neighborhoods. Over 500 such neighborhoods have been affected in the last 50 years, with some cities losing over 80 to 90% of their Black majority, leading to reduced social cohesion, increased financial strain, and loss of heritage, right? All this stuff is going on right up under our eyes, man. Right up under our eyes. So now we go back here and we listen to this malarkey that a lot of them are. Let's just go back and listen to some of this, because I just wanted to put things in perspective of these people, these boule class and these gatekeepers, right? When they were in position, they didn't do what they were supposed to do. They fight for everybody else but us. There's been no executive orders for anything, reparations claim, or anything specifically for Black Americans. No. They fight for everybody else.
They basically are what and what. We've actually had to sue Democrats before at the Lawyers Committee, because we're a nonpartisan organization and anybody can get it when it comes to our rights. We sued Democrats for racial gerrymandering in Illinois when they cracked the Black community.
Right.
You hear this? Do you hear this, right? We sued Democrats also because they was being racist, of course. Because everybody is against the Black American. Everybody. They're not in the business of allowing you to flourish, because you are the footstool for everybody else. They took the chains off your wrists and put them on your mind, right? And they handpicked a certain few Black people, the gatekeeping boule group, a Jack and Jill group, to put them over you, to keep you in the position that you're supposed to be in. So now they fear mongering you. Oh my God, they redistrict everything. The democracy is falling. You are in trouble. Come on, man. That's what I'm saying. They playing with you.
So, this is the name of the game. It is always about race. It's always about power.
Congressman Bobby Scott, this Justice Lena Kagan said, and I've been saying this as well, that this decision could be the largest wipeout of Black political power since the end of Reconstruction. That's how devastating this decision is.
Well, she's probably right. We don't know the exact impact of it, but all you can say good about it is it could have been worse. They could have struck.
Hold on for a second. Let me say this. For them to be able to get up here and make that statement in 2026, right, with all the progress that we made, but now you're saying just in one swap, it all falls apart, then it was built on a glass house in the first place. And you guys have been a colossal failure. So you're mad at the grassroots foundational Black Americans. You're mad at grassroots FBA. But you're not holding these people accountable that's been in positions of power all these years. What have they done? What have they done? Look at Black Washington, D.C. Look at what's happening to Black Philadelphia. It's been a colossal failure. And when you hear these people talk, like, this stuff is just dumb, man. You are around a group of people who believe that everything you got, they gave it to you. And if it was up to them, they'd be still stringing you up from trees. They believe that you are animals. They believe that you are worse than the gum on the bottom of their shoe, right? And we are the only group after slavery had to go back and be under those people to prove that we were human. So we went through Jim Crow and black codes and all that after slavery, right? And instead of you closing the door and protecting each other, you open up the door for all other groups and everybody else. And those groups do not come here with the same thought process we went through because they haven't been through the same thing we've been through here. So that failed. You figured if we get these other groups in here, we can boost our numbers up to compete against W supremacy. And it failed because those groups come here, they go get you funny. But instead of you saying, well, that strategy didn't work, you go and you blame the grassroots. But then you come up here and saying that they done rolled back. We've lost all political power. Who falls on the sword for this? Whose fault is it? They're not saying that, though.
Taking the entire Voting Rights Act down, they didn't. But what Lawyer Hewitt was just saying is by requiring an intent, you've made it virtually impossible to prove a case. People are sophisticated. They know what words to use and what words not to use. And as he has indicated, since African Americans are voting overwhelmingly Democratic and Republicans are voting overwhelmingly Republican, you can have a map that discriminates against African Americans. But if you call it partisan, that your target was Democrats, the same map, according to these people.
Stop. See, first of all, you go back to why these laws were implemented in the first place. The problem with it is the Democrats don't want to go specifically for what was happening to Black Americans. They cannot abandon all help everybody. They can't abandon that, right? Because we know that in this country, based off of what happened to us, there's no way of us knowing if these people ain't being racist or not. So now when they're in power, how do I know if he ain't calling me a nigga under his breath when I'm standing in front of him while I'm going to get a job? We have nothing and nothing to protect us. Everything went based off of color, sex. There was nothing to protect us. And you guys are fighting to get those things to protect us. So now this is why this happens. Because now they say, well, we can't discriminate based off of race. This whole country has always discriminated based off of race, and there's no provisions or protections to protect Black Americans based off of race. That's the Democrats' fault. That's your fault.
People becomes legal. So that doesn't make any sense. If the map is illegal, that's why the effects test was so much better, because if you can show it has the effect of discriminating against African Americans, that ought to be enough. Now you
already can show. We already know historically what this country is, and there's not been a change. There's not been a change. This just shows just how weak and the failures of you, because you have no backbone. You have no backbone to stand on business and say, hey, listen, I understand Hector and them. I understand these other groups, but this is us. We was on them fields. We was on them fields down there in Mississippi, down there in Alabama. We was on Tobacco Road in the Carolinas. We was on them rice plantations in South Carolina, right? This is an issue. This is an issue when you want to bring things back to race. There's never been recompense. There's never been a psychological evaluation on W's in this country to see how they view us. So what you're admitting here, without admitting it, is you failed and you put everything back into the hands of the Confederates because you cared about everybody else but black people.
You got to show that not only does it have the effect of discriminating, it had the intent, not the intent of discriminating against Democrats, but the discrimination against African Americans. And what they do is they just get the script and read it into legislative hearings and just declare themselves to be discriminating against Democrats. And the discriminatory map against African Americans all of a sudden, according to the Supreme Court today, because partisan gerrymandering is okay, that illegal map now becomes legal. It's going to be virtually impossible.
So, hold on. What?
Possible to create a case against sophisticated wordsmiths who.
So what he just told you is they fail, and don't look for us to come and rescue you. It's going to be virtually impossible to fight against sophisticated wordsmiths. We are not strong enough or intelligent enough. We have the brains the size of a baboon. That's what he's telling you. Now all of a sudden he want to mention African Americans and Black Americans. Well, y'all wasn't talking like that before. And this is a disgrace, man. This is a disgrace. Like the elders, our grandparents and great grandparents is turning over in their grave, man. They left the keys to these bums. All they cared about was filling their pockets and getting titles, but no power. Titles and no power. Who falls on the sword for this, Roland? Who's responsible for this? Who gets in trouble for this, Roland? While you guys were at the helm and the driver's seat. Y'all didn't see this coming? Man, this is a joke, man. It's a joke. So you just put everything in the back of the hands of the Confederates. So now it's foundational Black Americans. We on the clock. What we going to do about it? What we going to do about it? That's my question. I got more of this coming out, man. As more of this come out, man, you know, we'll talk about it, man. But let's listen to a little bit of what Tariq Nasheed said.
Black voters, you put these politicians in office, and the tangibles, the funding for our schools and our community centers and our housing, they've been rerouted out of our neighborhoods into these immigrant enclaves. We watch our city budgets and our federal resources bypass foundational Black American communities and go to all of these new immigrant groups and non-citizens. So the Voting Rights Act, that was giving us the illusion of political representation, but the bag was being handed to everybody else. That's the reality. That's why when I asked Big Old Redbone, hey, what's happening now that hasn't been happening? She couldn't say nothing, so she tried to crash out. Listen, it's about time the table got shaken up, dismantling the whole do-nothing gatekeeper class. We got to be honest about the type of politicians these little safe districts produce, because the Voting Rights Act essentially guaranteed that whoever won the primary in a Black district is going to win the general election. So that created a class of hand-picked, complacent gatekeepers. And these politicians basically specialized in offering us symbolisms, you know, kente cloths and just all that, just nothing burgers. Everything except fighting for our economic needs. So discarding all of these gerrymandered lines, that disrupts the comfortable careers of politicians who've been. But listen, man, We need a collapse of the whole people of color umbrella. For years, man, the political establishment, they've used the Voting Rights Act to lump foundational Black Americans into a broad, meaningless people of color BIPOC umbrella. They use our specific history and our systematic disenfranchisement to pass laws and then spread the benefits of those laws across every other minority group. So with the Voting Rights Act gutted, that fake coalition, it collapses. And see, that forces the conversation away from broad minority rights and forces us to negotiate strictly for our own specific lineage. So we're not going to be used as a political mule for all these other agendas. And this is also going to force a strategic swing vote. See, power respects power. Leverage requires agility. So as long as our votes were being safely packed into these voting right protected districts, neither party really had to compete for us. The Republicans wrote us off. The Democrats took us for granted. So by dismantling the whole map, that forces Black voters to become a true swing vote. So if our votes are dispersed, we can hold both parties hostage in tight elections. We can finally say, whoever puts the best tangibles on the table, they're going to get the vote. And if neither of you do, then we'll withhold the vote entirely. See, that's how real politics is played. So this makes us a real swing vote. So they keep really attacking us. Oh, this is the Black community. This is gonna. Oh, the Black community. The Democrats are losing their seats. This is what this really is about. This illusion of urgency. This is partisan survival really disguised as Black empowerment. We got to be real honest about why the alarm bells are ringing right now and the panic over this Supreme Court striking down the voting rights. It's not rooted in some moral revelation about the disenfranchisements of foundational Black American voters. This is about the math of maintaining Democrat power.